is Rock and Roll Grad School with your hosts Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling. When do they get to sing My Way?
Hello, kiddies. We are going to have a good time together. We have Tammy Golden. What do we classify her as?
Our new best friend.
Okay, perfect. Because not really singer, songwriter, certainly, and then some, musician, songwriter.
Yes.
She is the author of or co-author of a new musical about a lot of things. We'll get into all of it.
Yes, called Wendy Darling.
Wendy, my darling.
My darling, excuse me.
Okay. And she is friends with,
yes, because her name is actually Wendy Darling. So Wendy, my darling would be that. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm glad you kind of did that work. It would have been funnier if you were like, oh, that's where it comes from.
No.
And right. And then, but she's friends with two folks we keep hoping one of these days we'll just log on to Zoom and they're sitting there.
Which would be fantastic.
Oh my God, yeah. She played drums with Sparks for 10 years or so. And what's most impressive is she played drums on the 21 night stand in the UK when they played every record all the way through.
Yes. And she's just really cool. And
yeah,
she's just super talented, super cool, just thoroughly delightful. Smart.
I don't want to slight her, and maybe it's just slighting us by saying this and I sound petty. Bit of an overachiever, making the rest of us look bad.
Well, true. Yeah. But I mean, she also makes us look good because even with as busy as she is and what an overachiever she is, she took time to spend like an hour with us. Because we also didn't mention like her vast career in television as well.
This is true. Yet again, making all of us look bad.
But yet again, took time to spend with us.
Yes,
where she easily could have brushed us under the rug. So we should really take credit for that.
For being interesting enough.
For being interesting enough.
For being interesting enough too. That should be an award.
Right.
For what are the Webbies? The podcast awards?
I don't know. What are the ones that
I don't know.
It's doing? I don't know.
For being worth this person's 45 minutes, please welcome. I mean, that's a big ask. Now that you say that, like that's
like legitimately.
Right. Have you watched the Jason Isbell documentary yet?
No, I'm dying to. I might watch that in bed tonight. So you should have told me I had homework to complete before.
Well, no, you have your own schedule.
I know, but you're going to ruin it for me now.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
So the thing was, I finished watching it yesterday.
Okay.
And my sort of knee-jerk in that moment reaction was, this is amazing.
Okay.
In hindsight now, I don't know how much of that was attributable to my mind state.
Wait, so am I supposed to watch it so that we know if it's really good or not? Because I will be all over that.
Kind of.
Okay.
Like, I think I really liked it. The elder walked through when I started it and kind of stood there for a second while they were recording one of the songs. And he just turns to me and goes, well, that's a really good song. And I wanted to be like, oh, he is kind of one of the preeminent songwriters. Okay, but yes, it is a very good song.
Yes. Who knows a lot of our friends.
He does.
He's worked with a lot of our friends.
Which is great because I would like to be one of his friends at some point.
Well, we will. Yeah. We will be one of his friends.
Wendy, my darling, how did this come about? When did this start?
It started as a pandemic project. I have never had time. I've always worked in other people's projects, and I've gone back and forth for a long time between television production and music. And in 2011, I've been the drummer for Sparks.
We'll get there.
Mael.
We will be
don't
going to
worry.
spend some time talking about the Mael.
Okay. Well, we did a project called The Seduction of Ingmar Bergman, and it was a live stage show that we did at the Ford Theater. And that project was highly, highly satisfying to be in town and create a stage production that we could do in our hometown stood out to me because, you know, when you're on the road, it's very fun to play shows, but it's hard. It's hard to travel. And a lot of people think or assume that you're getting to spend time in the places that you visit, but that's not always the case. And so I sort of reverse engineered a way to promote the solo music that I was making by creating a show. And I felt like if I could create that, because some of the best experiences that I had were when we went to a place and did a thing like music festivals. There's a festival in Spain that we did a few times where we would switch cities. And in one weekend, we would be in Madrid. And then in the next weekend, we would be in Barcelona. And I thought, gosh, if I could have a show that utilized music and we went to a place and we did that show in that place as part of Fringe festivals, that seems like it would be the equivalent of a music festival. And I have to tell you guys, it exceeds all expectation that I had about it. We picked places that we wanted to go, and we just reverse engineered the experience that we wanted to have. And it's just been a joy. It's been so fun. And the reception of it, you know, the stuff that I didn't expect was that because we based the show around Peter Pan, I didn't understand that there's a whole group of people out there who are Peter Pan fanatics. So, you know, we do get to hear from people after they see the show, kind of what attracted them to it in the first place. And sometimes it's the original music and they like musicals and they just see everything that comes to their town because it's musical. Mm-hmm. And then there's some people that see the artwork, and as they're choosing what to do that weekend, they sort of see the artwork of Wendy and they're like, oh, what is that? And then they go and investigate it. But there's a whole third group of people that anytime something tangentially related to Peter Pan hits their world, they explore that. And so we're getting all the trifecta of all of those people coming out to the show.
What do you think it is about the Peter Pan story? I love Peter Pan. Like I'm not to that level, but it is one of my favorite stories of all time. What is it about it?
Why does it resonate with you? Why is it one of your favorite stories of all time?
Well, it started when I was little. It started with the Disney version. I was very torn on whether I wanted to be Wendy, Tiger Lily, or Tinkerbell, and depending on the day, I would switch. I grew up to definitely be probably Tinkerbell, but you know, well, okay, yes, I did. But then I had the opportunity to read the play as a kid, and I lived in London for a little while and went to J.M. Barrie's house. So there's all these different things, but then the story itself, I think there's something so magical of being able to not necessarily grow up, but still understand you need to grow up. Like that balance that walks through there, I think has always, I don't know. So that's what's resonated with me.
And pirates.
And so I love pirates.
Ticks all the boxes.
And I've often collected Lost Boys. So, so actually pretty much everything spoke to me on all levels.
Well, the actress who plays Wendy wrote the book for this. And it was a story that resonated with her. It was her favorite fairy tale. I am 180 degrees from Peter Pan. I sort of came into the world a 65-year-old grandma. I've always been like really grounded and didn't really relate to the story of Peter Pan because, and this is something that we explored in our story. And we're of two different generations. The actress who wrote the book and stars in it is a lot younger than I am. And she completely relates to Peter Pan. It was her favorite fairy tale. And she's an actress and involved in art. And she's 100% heart and not head. And she's a different generation. So for me, I'm almost 100%, even though I work in art, I am an executor of things, and I just kind of roll up my sleeves no matter what I'm doing and kind of get into the details of it. But because I grew up in a different time, I love that people have a magical childhood, but in my mind, Disney hijacked this idea of childhood, because when I was growing up, adults had all the fun. Adults were drinking and going to parties. And when you were an adult, you have money and you have freedom, and you are an agent of your own happiness. And so as she was exploring what she wanted to write about, because the album had themes that were driven by the songs, and we decided, wow, this is a really interesting world, and we see it very, very differently. And I feel like everybody is getting it wrong in the present moment, and that, you know, they're sort of looking back with nostalgia and whimsy. And it's great if you have parents who make your childhood magical, that's a wonderful thing. But if you don't, all is not lost, because when you grow up, you can create whatever kind of life you want to have, and you can't do that when you're 11. So to me, it just seems like the world kind of got tilted, and we wrote this story about a woman who ends up, through her daughter and through the story of Peter Pan, after she's outed to the world as Wendy from, you know, she's Wendy Darling from Peter Pan, she realizes when her daughter's heart gets broken that she's in charge of her happiness, in much the same way that she's trying to teach her daughter, you know, you don't have to depend on a boy or a phone call or other people to find happiness. And ironically, whenever you're doing a artistic project with other people, we found that, right? Because making anything can be super, super hard. And we have this group of really strong-willed, competent women who are all representing a different path. We all have very, very different lives. We're different ages. We do different jobs. But we have, you know, I did all the music and produced this. We have a female director named Krisha Plonka. April Wish is our actress, and she wrote the script, the book for the story. And then we have a visual artist named Masa Zargaran. And each one of us has a different family situation. Some of us are moms, some of us aren't. And we're at different phases in our life. But this artistic experience, even though it's been hard, has been unbelievably satisfying, in the same way that Wendy Darling realizes, like, okay, my life has been hard, and all of these things didn't necessarily work out the way I thought they were going to, but it's a whole beautiful, magical human experience that I'm having. And that's the really fun part of the story and the experience.
Well, I love it too, because even your two stories, obviously not knowing the stories of the other two, but your two stories to me sort of parallel with the message, the overall message of Peter Pan, right? That it's you almost need a little bit of both, right? For that ultimate magical life. Like, you need to still hold that there is a possibility of magic, but being responsible is not necessarily being boring, because you do have control of your all the things you already said, but you sort of, as individuals, are embodying what I think the message of the story was originally.
100%. Yeah. And I didn't know when we embarked on this that the original novel that J.M. Barrie wrote was actually, you know, Wendy was in the title. It was Peter Pan and Wendy. Yep. And the book starts with her. It's her story, and very much a story of her and her mom. And she sort of bookends it. But Disney completely changed that when they did the animated version. And I just wasn't familiar with that. So, I mean, there's no bigger metaphor for what we're trying to say as women, and just being present in the world and owning our agency. And right, we've had a whole conversation post Me Too about being heard and being seen. And ironically, you know, again, I'm older than my collaborators, and this is another ironic epiphany that I had, as you know, similar to, oh, childhood is magical and somehow being an adult is a drag. I certainly have not had that experience. I think the older I get, the more I know myself, the more satisfying life is, the more freedom I have. But ironically, the same message that the world tells women about getting older, that it's scary and that you become invisible and that you lose your agency, I have not found that to be the case, because of course, just like anything else, we're becoming more interesting people, and we have references to draw upon, and we're finding out what our passions are. And I think that the scary part might be if you value what being represents means, like if your only value is sort of being young and hot, well, then it's scary to get older because you're not always going to be young and hot. But if that's not what you invested in, then you're fine, right? Because all the things that you invested in, you know, all the things you like to do, you're only becoming more competent in those areas. So I feel like I'm also just carrying this flag for women of a certain age to say, well, it doesn't have to be scary. It's actually really interesting because you are, you're embracing more and more of what you like to do and becoming freer, hopefully freer in your life to voice those opinions and lean into all that stuff, maybe a little bit more than you did when you were in your 20s and 30s, and maybe the world was telling you to be a little quieter and stay in your lane. I think you get braver as you get older.
Well, and don't you think focusing on the things you focus on ultimately, and not worrying so much about being young and hot, ultimately makes you stay gorgeous forever, which you are, but you know, but like your inner beauty like exudes to your exterior beauty. So if you focus on happiness and your age and doing what you love, and the wisdom and everything we gain as we get older, and the confidence, it comes out of our pores so that we look great exterior wise.
I agree completely. You know,
so
you sort of radiate. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And you're radiating joy in a way that when you're younger and less confident, it's pretty hard to do.
Yes, agreed.
The
that's awesome.
lineup, as you were talking about, sort of the key roles in the making of this production being women of different ages and different backgrounds, was that something you intended to do, or was it just an incredibly happy accident where one day you looked around and said, oh wow, look at the kind of diverse storylines we have here?
No, it was intentional. I have mostly worked, especially in music, I've mostly worked with dudes. And that is because I have been hired in other people's projects. And so when I was putting my own project together, it was very intentional for me to find women to collaborate with. And I was also starting to produce. You know, I played everything on the record, and I had started playing bass before the pandemic, but I didn't have a home studio, and I only played guitar well enough to compose. I'm not a great guitar player, but I didn't even think I would be able to make an album playing all the instruments myself when I started this. I was writing the songs and then thinking about who I would bring with me on the adventure. And I do have some collaborators. My guitar teacher, Nick Chamian, joined me, and he plays most of the guitar solos. I recruited my son to sing on one song with me, and I hired a trumpet player. But, you know, I did all the basic tracks myself and wrote everything. And so when I was thinking about, it really was this dilemma, because I had played everything. How am I going to promote this record? Because I'm just not going to put a band together and go out on the road. That sounds like torture to me. I cannot imagine doing that. And also, I have a job that I love. You know, I supervise physical production at a studio, and that's a dream job. But, you know, I was never going to leave that job. And when I'm in other people's projects, it's ideal because I can come in as a ringer. I have availability. I can take vacation time. I'm a real responsible person. So if somebody needs me to learn something, I'm that person who can woodshed on my own, learn all of that stuff, you know, at my house. And then, you know, I had a rehearsal space at my house, but I didn't have a studio that was outfitted to record. But I can learn all of that stuff at home, meet up with people, and very quickly get into a band that either has an injured player. You know, I was a utility person for a long time, so I can come into other people's projects, and no matter what they need, you know, if it's a 2-week run or a festival or someone, you know, played a lot of gigs where someone went to rehab, you know, and I'm that person, and I can cover for them, and then they come back to the gig. But when I was looking to promote my own music, I really did look for women because I hadn't done that before. And I'm always trying to amplify female friends. And I had worked with Masa, who's the visual artist in this project. I had worked with her as a musician, but I also knew that she was a fine artist. And so the videos that she did for this project, which we created lyric videos for each song. Again, that was because I was thinking, well, I'm not going to tour with this record. So when someone like Jamie, our publicist, comes in, like, what kind of assets is she going to need to help promo this? There's going to have to be unique elements that she can talk about. And whether I'm on podcasts or, you know, doing a show, there has to be some sort of asset and promo plan around the music, or else you're just releasing songs into the ether.
Yeah. As a songwriter, how hard was it for you to write in the different characters' voices, or is that something that you already do, a la Randy Newman or the Maels?
Oh, you're so sweet. I wish I could write like those people. That's very aspirational. And for me,
Well, yeah.
the first songs were inspired by a couple of things that happened at work, and they actually were written I'm glad you asked the question, because they were written in the voice of Busy Phillips. I had a really specific thing sort of happen. And when I came home and I was thinking about what inspired the songs and I sat down to write, I actually wrote 2 of the songs in her voice. And then as I started writing the album and picturing it as a show, it wasn't originally around this idea of Wendy Darling and Peter Pan. That didn't happen until April Wish came on board and she wrote the script. It was a different idea, but we used the same outline because the initial idea I had was about a woman finding her voice who would be played by Busy Phillips. Then when April came on board, we wrote a different story. And when we had this part in it, which was for her, Wendy Darling's best friend, that's when we realized, wow, it would be so cool. Number one ask, if we could get anybody to play this role. Busy inspired some of these songs. Is there any way we could get this to her? You know, she might not say yes, but it was inspired by her. Maybe we could ask. And she was the first person who said yes. She was the one and only person we went to. So we've had a lot of experiences like that in the process of making this, where we had an aspirational, you know, just dream of like, who could play this? Who would want to? And in the case of Busy and John Cryer, who plays Wendy Darling's agent, those 2 people were our only ask. We went out to each of them with our dream cast, and both of them responded to the material and said yes. And now I can't believe that we get to have them in our show. But again, that was very intentional because we knew there was no way to write a live show that they would be able to participate in every night. And so their roles are played back in voice memos, phone calls, Zoom video chat, and text. And we did that deliberately because we thought, this would be, if we can get them, they're going to give us a day. These are busy actors who, are in things all the time that are going to pay a lot more and advance their careers. This has to be a passion project for everybody. And so we needed to make it be easy and accessible and a joy. And so everyone we've asked along the way said yes, and we got our dream cast, but it was also designed so that they could come and be a part of it with us and be a celebration in it.
That's awesome. Plus it gives their role, and I won't say this in case you change your mind, but years down the road, they don't ever have to be recast. Like it can be them forever. They can always be those roles, which what better legacy or desire if you create a part that was inspired by you, especially to know that it's always you.
Well, one thing that, I'm not part of, this is the only time I've ever done something in theater. I consider the stuff that I do with the Maels, that's all music. So even though we did Seduction of Ingmar Bergman, and that was in the back of my mind as like, well, how could I create something like this? And I was involved in that, and it set the template and made me understand the mechanics of how I could do it. I don't consider myself like a theater person. And one sort of interesting, unexpected realization that I had is that when we were putting this together, I was picturing, because it's a singular role for a middle-aged actress, I was thinking to myself, wow, this could be so cool because any actress anywhere could put this on, and they really only have to talk to one person, me, right? Like they get in touch with me, and I can license all the music, and all of this video and the whole show. And it's really just April Wish and our director and I giving an actress in Kansas City or, Springfield, wherever they wanted to do it. What I didn't understand about community theater and smaller theater productions, the irony of that is that in order to attract an audience, they actually need a bigger cast.
That's true.
Because I didn't understand that. So like you need a bigger cast so that those people touch their networks to come see you. And like I found that out. I was like, oh, this is such an attractive thing. And now that I'm further into it, I realize, oh, no, it's not an advantage to have one person in your show. You actually, in a community theater, you want to tap the community so that they come out and see your production. It's kind of interesting.
It's super interesting. And I've done a lot of theater, but it didn't occur to me until you started saying it. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. But festivals and things like fringe festivals and arts festivals and things like that, the singular person is an advantage because the festivals got the draw.
That's what we found. Yeah.
That works.
The other thing too is that I really wanted to create something celebratory and fun, joyful. Music is joyful. So I wanted it to be, and also I'm sort of a light spirit. So I just wanted to come into it and make something uplifting and fun. I didn't understand, because I'm not a theater person necessarily, that a lot of solo theater pieces are pretty dark because they're about someone's journey, whether that's through cancer or grief or a breakup. A lot of people tackle pretty heavy subject matter in their solo show. And so the other thing that we found that's unexpected is how much fun the festivals are having promoting our show, because it's very unusual. The playback is pretty sophisticated. We have video elements, we have music videos that play back. I play live with an acoustic guitar, and then we have music that plays back. And so for a solo theater piece, because April is the actress in this, I think it's unusual and theater directors find it really fresh. I also thought it was really important to make something that was about an hour. And this, again, just goes to sort of me being a light spirit and not being super familiar with theater things. I really wanted people to be able to go out, have dinner, see a show that was about something that they could talk about, and then be able to leave the theater and talk about it. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, people can get together after work, a group of women can have drinks, they can come see our show, and then go to dinner afterward and talk about these themes about empowerment and a woman finding her voice and, you know, embracing her authenticity, which is what Wendy does in the show. So all of that was intentional, but there were consequences to it that I didn't expect because I'm not part of that world, which is really the joy in the theater directors saying, oh my gosh, this is so much fun, because, you know, we can actually schedule you guys before a heavy show or after a heavy show, and people can see both in the Fringe, because this is either setting up a certain feeling that people are going to have, or it's a palate cleanser. So it's been really fun to find that out too.
Yeah.
And it's further proof that I just saw the Oscar nominated shorts, which I see every year. And I'm always amazed because so often we feel it takes 3 hours to tell this compelling story and an epic, right? But they can bring you to tears and bursts of laughter in 15 minutes with these shorts. And so it doesn't have to take hours. And the best part of the theater or seeing a film is going out after to talk about it and relive it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot here. Yeah, there's a lot here to discuss. I watch those every year as well, and I thought especially the doc shorts this year were particularly strong.
See, I haven't seen the docs yet.
Oh, they're so good.
Okay, I have to watch them tomorrow.
Really yeah, there's a really strong, I mean, I love them every year, but there's just so much going on in the world that these stories tackle, and I just felt like the set of docs that are nominated this year, I love all of them, but I especially really liked the docs this year. There's a particularly strong set.
All right, tomorrow that's the plan, because they break it up around here. So we saw the other two and we didn't get to the docs yet, but that'll be tomorrow. Gotta be ready for Sunday night. I will for sure.
Exactly.
For sure. Oh, so fun. Looks like
I don't know if I have any questions. I'm just fascinated listening to this and hearing the origin of it. And it's so, in some ways, it almost seems like it was destined to become this thing, like the way everything just fell together relatively easy, given whatever production has its own road bumps, but like that it came together and it's doing what you thought it would do and more. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah. And it's been completely magical. And even having worked with people, you know, Jamie brought us together, and I had promoted a record with Jamie probably 10 years ago and always wanted to work with her again. Bringing her into this as well, really in every facet, whether it's the women making the show and whose names you read on the program, or everybody behind the scenes, all of these incredibly competent, strong, accomplished women have had a role in it. And it's just a supreme pleasure to bring everybody together again at every level that whether we're making it, executing it out in the world, traveling to a new city to perform it or to promote it. It just seems like we're amplifying a lot of the themes that we set out to create in the piece, in the execution of it as well. So it's been super, super fun.
Yeah, you're practicing what you preach. Makes complete sense. Yeah.
It's been great. Yeah.
And that you're balancing, and I can't think, and it's terrible. I'm going to fail our entire conversation because the two people that popped into my head are men. They're wonderful men, but you're like balancing the schedule of like a Ryan Seacrest, Michael Strahan, of having these like this very large job, but still finding time to do these amazing other passion projects that are also a job, but it's just, I struggle with it every day. So I'm listening to and watching and going, okay, I can figure this out. I can make this work to dedicate more to this, less to that, but not give up that and all of it.
Totally. I mean, I don't know that balance is a thing. I think everybody feels like that. It's an unbalanced life if you have a passionate life. But I love the examples that you pick. Those are also, hugely aspirational people and careers. I mean, the difference though is that I'm behind the scenes. Those guys are out front on camera every day, and I don't have a job like that. My job is batchable because I don't have a call time to sit in front of a camera and perform. I'm not performing my job in that way. But the other thing that's sort of significant is that I'm an empty nester, and I know that this would not have been possible while my son was in school. He's off at college at UCLA right now and lives in the dorms. But if I were in a different phase in my life, I certainly wouldn't have had the bandwidth to create this or promote it. There's just no way. And so that's the other thing that I would say to women, is that each phase of your life, when you're in it, it sort of feels like, well, I would never have time to, and then fill in the blank, whatever it is, exercise or paint or ride horses or whatever. But just like everything else in life, as you get older, you realize, oh, right, no, I wouldn't have time. I wouldn't have had time when I was establishing my career and working 15-hour days, 17-hour days in production on sets in my 20s. But once I transitioned to an executive job, even though there's more pressure, the hours on set are less. And so then all of a sudden you say, oh, okay, well, now music can be a bigger part of my life. And, I was always transitioning between jobs. So in the downtime, I might have months off where I could go on tour, or I could work on someone's album, or I could take a musical job. And then when the right alignment happened within production, I could go back to an executive job. So I was always going back and forth, knowing that I had to balance it, but then becoming an empty nester once my son went off to college and being completely shut down by the pandemic. The other epiphany that I had that might be worth mentioning, because it's sort of interesting, is I did not understand until the pandemic that I am an introvert who just loves people. I actually thought I was an extrovert because I spend all my time around people, and I quite liked it. I just thought that that's who I was. And then about 3 months into the pandemic, I was truly happier than I'd ever been in my life.
Too.
You were too?
Yes,
Yeah. And my son and my husband were having a really hard time. We were sort of talking about it one night over dinner, and I realized, wow, I'm happier than I've ever been. And I should have known this, because all the things I like to do are very internal, thoughtful, quiet. I love to read. I love to play instruments. I like to solve problems. I like to compose. They're all solo activities. Songwriting is a thoughtful internal exercise that takes a really long time. Working on a song, some of them come quickly, some of them evolve over months, but they're all very quiet internal activities where you go very deep, and then you look up at a clock and you have that experience of like, oh my gosh, it's midnight. I have to get up and go to work in the morning. I need to go to bed. I had no idea that I was an introvert, and I never would have known if the pandemic hadn't happened. But it took it took a global pandemic for me to have that time and realize, like, oh, I'm not feel like being around people, even though I do it all the time, is kind of exhausting. And because I'm a hyper person, I didn't quite realize what it like the cost of it. But when I was home and could go very deep into books and poetry and songwriting and composition and learning to play the guitar a lot better, all of those things, I was so thrilled to be able to do that. But I never would have found that out if I hadn't had the time to do it, which in a normal life, if our lives had just continued pre-2020, no one would have realized that.
Yeah.
It's interesting, the kind of the takeaway that there definitely, I don't want to say was an upside to it, but like there's a silver lining to it. There's a silver lining of a lot of bad things happen, but at the same point, in some ways, if anyone can take anything positive out of it, it sort of feels like, okay, well, it's a good thing. And the fact that sort of, I think, it's interesting that just what everybody was doing during the pandemic. I feel like the way it forced a lot of people to find their own creativity and explore it and spend time with it.
100%.
And there's something really kind of wonderful and beautiful about this of, okay, I can't consume art in the way I normally do, so I just got to make something on my own, and it's got to be my own thing. And it's kind of nice, and it's kind of like, I think it deepened a lot of people's appreciation for that.
Agreed.
100%. I think we're still finding the art that is coming out of the pandemic, and I think it's really different than what occurred before. I mean, as a society, we've all just experienced so much together in the last 3 years, and the world is really different. And anytime people go through something like that, art helps you process everything that we're all going through. And so to me, it's just been a really inspiring time for sure.
Yeah. So you alluded to it earlier, and we said we were going to get there. How did you meet the Maels?
I auditioned for them. I was in bands my whole life, and I was recommended to them. So in that way, it's not such an interesting story, because basically I was recommended to them and I auditioned. The part that gets interesting is that, I sort of didn't expect that I got that gig. I auditioned for a lot of things in the 90s.
You're saying Ron's hard to read?
Yeah, exactly. Blast. All right, you know Ron Mael. I went and auditioned, and I had no idea I got the gig. And then their manager called and said, "You are gonna, do this festival." And the very first festival I played with them was a summer festival for probably 20,000 people in Paris. And they, had traveled ahead to do press and promote it. And, they also, Russell speaks French, and they lived in Paris. So it was all new to me. And I will always be incredibly grateful to them as artists. I mean, so much of what I learned about everything came from them. But all of those experiences, traveling with them, seeing the industry through their eyes, dealing with bandmates, how they've navigated the industry, the film that they worked on with Edgar Wright is so aspirational. Okay. And, the legacy and commitment that they have to their art is, I admire it so much, and I'm really, really grateful to them.
What are they like as producers? Because I know you played on a bunch of records for them. Were they very hands-off, or is it just...
Oh, not at all. No, they produce their own records, and they're competent in every way. They absolutely don't get enough credit for what they bring to production and the ground that they are always breaking. They're also completely insular, and I think that that's the reason that they I think they're getting their due now, and everyone loves them. And so, I also love them and celebrate them. But I think that part of the reason why it was harder for them to break through is because they are insular. And, they originally worked with amazing producers like Tony Visconti and Giorgio Moroder and so many producers, but they learned all of those tasks along the way, and they do that for each other. So they're not relying on other people. And when you are insular in that way, it's harder to break through, and people don't know that you're doing all of that. But yeah, I mean, they're incredibly competent in every way. And, you know, they also, even though Ron composes on a keyboard and Russell is an engineer, they both play guitar, and they both, you know, those early demos that Ron makes of the songs when he's teaching other people to play them, they're complete. It's not like someone else is coming in and taking the bones of something and amplifying it or tweaking it. You know, the phases that they go through are things that they want to explore as artists that aren't related to any kind of A&R, you know, person telling them what to do, or a commercial aspiration that they're trying to chase. It's all completely driven by what they want to explore artistically, and that's hugely admirable. So admirable.
Yeah. What's in playing drums with him, what's your favorite song every night? Was it like?
Well, there were different phases, and certainly when you're playing a set, you're feeding off of the audience's energy. So the different songs were my favorite, sometimes based on what the audience was reacting to. And they have such regional hits. It sort of depended, like, you know, the song When I'm With You, when you play that in Paris, it's almost like a standard. And so the audience gets really excited about that. Anywhere in France, you know, when you're in Germany, When Do I Get to Sing My Way? You know, that song is massive, right? And then if you're playing in LA, all of that 80s music, I grew up with that. And the audience really reacts to it. But I will say, when I had to learn Kimono My House, or the shows that we played in the early aughts, there were a whole series of shows that we did where we played that album from start to finish.
I was wondering if you were part of that group.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah, exactly. No pressure. And learning those parts, Dinky Diamond originally played those drum parts. And there is a sort of, I mean, I'm going to totally, how detailed do you want me to get? Do you want me to get really detailed?
Yeah. Oh, no, we can do the deep end. We can handle it.
Okay. Well, you know how, like, part of what makes Ringo a magical drummer is that he's left-handed playing a right-handed kit. And so a lot of those drum fills that he plays start on the right-hand side of the kit and they go to the left, and there's sort of a loping quality to his drum fills that give it a groove, and they're very idiosyncratic. And what I found, so I was familiar with Kimono My House and I loved all the songs, but it's kind of like an institution, right? It's like when you're a certain age and you hear Led Zeppelin or the Beatles, it's just always existed. And so you never question the parts, and it's just part of the landscape of your life. I sort of had that experience with Kimono because I knew those songs. I was familiar with the album. I loved the band, and I took it all for granted. And then when I had to go back and learn all of those drum parts and feel how quirky the timing is on a song, I mean, well, there's so many of them, but that entire album from start to finish, like Equator, that particular song has so many idiosyncratic drum moments in it that playing all of that stuff was, I was also, it was super fun. I felt really passionate about it, but also it was another experience, sort of like when I set out to make an album, where there was a moment when I was listening to all that stuff and trying to learn it, where I thought, oh, I can't do this. Like, this is just going to be too hard. And of course, the most satisfying moments in life are when you think you can't do something and then you tackle it and you realize that you did it. And so it was super fun. And when I played, there was one cycle of those songs where I would actually dress up in a kimono and I wore a little wig and like I played them. And so that was really, really fun. Very, very much enjoyed that. But my entire time with them was a thrill. I love those guys.
You can catch preview performances of Wendy, My Darling in Los Angeles, April 13th, 27th, and May 4th. They are also setting up dates for the Orlando International Fringe Festival. You can find out when that's going to be happening, and for all other information on the show, check out their website, wendymydarlingmusical.com.
Rock and Roll Grad School is produced by the Professional Production Company. Please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, because your impassioned review is just as honest as us standing backstage waiting to come back on for the encore. For more information, you can check out our website, rockandrollgradschool.com. And like everyone else, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Today's show was recorded and produced by Heidi Hagquist and myself from our world headquarters located on the second floor of the professional office building, centrally located downtown. Our reluctant executive producers are John Sauvé and Sandy Stone. Our willing executive producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our intern is Zach Jackson. This one's for Philippe. Thanks for joining us. Good night, drive safe, and may all your favorite bands stay together.